Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. So I just want to quickly set this up. This is a talk I did on your cover letter, and this is really where you get to tell a story, you get to really set the tone for your reel, and more importantly, you actually get to get your reel seen. A lot of your reels are going to get overlooked if you don't have a good cover letter. I talk about this as a case study in there where there was someone who wasn't able to get a job anywhere for the longest time, and then once I had tweaked the cover letter, he instantly started getting jobs at Sony, Digital Domain, and all these other places as well. So your cover letter is really critical, and I wanted to set this up so that way you really understand like the value of this, because this is really about breaking down the doors of whether your reel gets looked at in the first place, and then your reel is what's going to get you the job. Most people think they send their reel in. If their reel's good, they're going to get the work, but without setting the tone, without really qualifying you, a lot of reels go through the doors, so you want to be able to make yours stand out, and this is how you do it. So the cover letter is really critical. So that being said, let's get in there. There we go. So cover letter, I'm going to jump onto this for a second because I think that in a lot of ways this is the most important thing outside of your reel being awesome. And that is just the fact that most people I see do not, when they apply for a job, they don't really do the best job of introducing themselves. I actually have a massive collection. I was hoping to bring him in and like shame people by saying, okay, this person's attempt at writing a letter or applying for a job. I get a lot of those. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've built like a very big collection of the do's and don'ts of writing these things. But I will just say that it's very important, because if you're a studio that gets a lot of applicants, usually you've only got a few seconds to kind of decide whether or not you want to read more of something. And if someone's going to write you a life story like, hello, I'd like to apply for a job at ILM. It all began when my dog died 10 years ago, and it made me realize that I want to chase my dreams, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, they mention, by the way, I'm into animation, that is something I'm going to be falling asleep like I am right now, trying to, get through it all. And like I said, if you're very important, you're busy, you don't have time for that. And there's so many critical things I see people do. Other times they just say, here's my reel, regards so-and-so. And I had a friend of mine who worked for Blizzard. He worked for a lot of different studios, a lot of great stuff. He had a problem finding work for about 2 years, could not find any work. I even lined up a few job interviews for him, and it just seems like every time he applied anywhere, he didn't get it. And I had seen his reel. It looked great. I had seen all of his other stuff. It was awesome. He's a matte painter, very talented guy. And it made me think, okay, like the one thing he must be screwing up is his cover letter. So I emailed him. I said, hey, like, what do you say when you apply for a job? And he's like, well, I say, hi, my name's Alex. Here's my shit. And best regards, Alex. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what's going wrong. So I spent like 30 seconds and wrote like a big email and, just mad typer and sent it to him and said, send this around. And he was like, holy crap, this is awesome. So he sent that around, and within 2 weeks, he had 4 job offers: Sony, Digital Domain, and a couple other places. So from there, never had to look for work again. And that was his template moving forward to get work. Now, I'm going to get into that in a moment. I'm going to actually show the letters that I would send around to people. So I'm actually going to show you an actual letter that I use when I'm applying for work or looking for work. Now, just before I go any further, I'll go through it, and we're just going to talk about the stuff for a minute, but I'm not sure if you can read that. Awesome. So I'm going to try not to get dizzy, but I'm going to read this and just kind of mention a lot of key stuff. The biggest thing is your subject, okay? So what I'm doing here, man, the hangover is kicking in too. So what I'm doing here with the subject, okay, is I'm listing who I am, my experience. I'm kind of putting out an ad, okay? You're going on Craigslist. You want something that people are going to be like, ooh, click, And like I said, if people are looking around for, they're looking through a lot of emails that are being sent about job applicants, you want something that says, hey, I might be your person. I'm also summarizing who I am very quickly. And that means that if they're searching through and they're looking for effects, they can say, okay, yada, yada. Okay, lots of experience, this kind of role that I want, perfect. I've also done something where I'm making it searchable, and I'll get into this later on. But if they were to look for my name, it's going to pop up because the subject heading has my name. If they were to look for effects or TD, technical director, I'm essentially sneaking a lot of like meta tags into my email. So that way, when they go to search for pretty much anything, my name's going to keep popping up every single time. It's kind of like when you go to those websites and down the bottom, they have like all these extra words that mean nothing just because they want the search engines to pick it up. But, essentially you want to make sure your subject really summarizes who you are. Now, at the same time, it's pretty generic. I just wrote this up, but it does, I think, summarize a lot of stuff really quick. So my name's Allan. I'm VFX supervisor, blah, blah, blah. I've worked for a bunch of places, did some training at Ubisoft, worked at Blur, consulting at Activision. Now, what I did with the first paragraph, I pretty much summarized what I'm going to then mention, okay? So no mention of my dying dog or whatever. It's focused on saying, everything you're about to read, let me summarize right here. And for me, when I look at an email, if I see that, I'm going to say, okay, is this person who I want? Great, I'll read on. If you're going to get to your point on the third paragraph, you risk losing that person. Like I said, when they're looking at Reels, everything else, if you don't put all your stuff like, at the beginning and make it really impress them, they might never get to the end. And going back to show Reels, that's a really good point, that a lot of people will put their best shot at the very end because they want it to be like the movie trailer where Godzilla jumps up at the camera or something silly, and Godzilla jumps on the Eiffel Tower, But that's the thing, is that they might never get to see your best shot because they get about halfway, they're like, okay, cool, whatever. You want to keep all your best stuff at the beginning to really sell them and keep them interested. There's a guy I know, Neil Strauss, really famous author, and he was saying to a group of us about how every single line he writes in a book is just to get them to read the next line. And that's what you want. You want to make sure it's so tight, you're being respectful of their time in capturing them. So, I am going to flesh this out because I think it's really important, but your first paragraph, make sure it sells them on who you are, what you're about, so that way they're like, okay, great, this guy or girl is exactly who I want. I'm going to keep reading and find out more about them. Now, the best thing is I've put a lot of invisible threads in here, but besides managing VFX teams through deadlines and on-set supervision, primary expertise is simulations and creating natural phenomena, typically fire destruction, blah, blah, blah. These days, I help out a lot of bidding. Okay, so I haven't actually read this in a long time, but I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Basically, I'm putting a lot of stuff in there, so I'm kind of summarizing a lot of different things all at once. So I'm not specifically saying I'm a character animator, I animate characters, typically cartoon. I'm actually saying, hey, because the type of jobs I'm targeting are these. So I'm actually mentioning them all in one go. I can manage teams, I can help out on bids, because a lot of times when people are trying to get big projects, they don't know how much a tornado moving through a volcano that's being hit by an asteroid is going to cost. So if you're able to say, hey, I've got lots of experience, this is what I do, they're going to say, great, can you tell us how much to charge? So, this is where you can kind of extend your experience a lot further. By mentioning these things, it's mentioning exactly what I want. So that way it's hopefully going to resonate to them on one level or another. And sometimes when you're emailing, you're not emailing the head of 3D or anyone. You might be emailing HR or human resources. You might be emailing someone who is in charge of placing people but doesn't necessarily do the job. So if you mention I am a Krakatoa and P-Flow expert and I use Maya end particles for all my other stuff, they're going to be like, huh, what? So, you want to make sure that this stuff is in layman's terms. It's very clear for anyone. And again, that's something I'll get onto later on. Is just about making sure everything you do is searchable and clear. So that way, it's something that if they look at it, they're like, well, all I know is we need a particle effects TD. I don't know what that is, but we're looking for that. So if they see it in there, they're going to say, cool, okay, now this is someone we need to look into. So this sort of stuff here, it essentially is another way just to make sure I'm trying to pique their interest, no matter what, if they're really technical or if they're more just people who are looking to position something. Like a recruiter might need to find a very specific person, and they need to look for keywords to understand it. So another thing I mentioned, and it's such a simple thing, but I wanted to send you a brief email to introduce myself. I'm not specifically looking for work right now. I wanted to reach out, and I'm going to look down here before I get dizzy, but yeah, I wanted to reach out as I'm a big fan of your work at your studio. I recently finished up work on this one, and I'm currently wrapping on this one before I jump onto this other thing. So that, again, it's a bit exaggerated, but this is really interesting. I wanted to send you a brief email. It's the same way if you go up to someone that you don't know and you say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. It's very easy for people to be like, oh man, I don't have time for this. But if you say, I just wanted to quickly ask you a question, whether it's email or talking in person, that's something that kind of triggers in their head, okay, it's going to be very short. Sure, I'll give you my time. So it's something to disarm people when they get an email like, hey, I'm going to keep this brief, but I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. Okay. Another thing is, and this is interesting to me, none of this I did on purpose. It wasn't like I sat down after reading a book on psychology and was like, haha, I'm going to hypnotize you. But after a while, yeah, maybe I should buy me coffee. So one of the things is that anytime I have success, I always look at it same way with failure, and I'm like, what did I do right? Okay, I used to go to bars and get free drinks all the time, and I'm like, what was I doing right? So after a while, I sat down. I'm like, okay, I think it makes sense. I did this, this, and this. So then you could try and repeat it, and then go to a bar, and it's like, all right, trigger, trigger, trigger. Let's see if this worked. Free drink, score. So. With this sort of thing, like anytime I've had success, after a while I've looked at, okay, like that actually makes a lot of sense why I get that result. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time on this one subject, and then I'll go into lots of other stuff. But your cover letter is essentially, if you don't do it right, people won't look at your reel. I know that because I don't. If the letter doesn't say enough, or they're like, look at my shit, I don't really want to look at their shit. So yeah, I think it's quite important. But for me, one thing I started doing, because I wasn't specifically looking for work, I just wanted to reach out because I like this stuff, and one day I'd like to work for them. I stopped saying I would like to apply for a job, and instead I just wanted to make that introduction, and that way we know of each other and we can continue that conversation later on. And from receiving so many emails, from receiving so many job applications, if someone comes to me with the gimme, gimme, gimme mentality, they say like, hey, you give me a job. I don't know you, but I want a job at your company. And I've had people email me, one person 17 times emailed me over and over and over, basically saying, you need to give me a visa and a job and everything. It was awkward because I ended up working with him recently, and it's just like, oh, that's that guy, But that whole mentality, like, if people contact you and say, I want all this stuff, and you don't have the answer that they want, like, I'm sorry, but we're not looking right now, whatever, it's actually a lot harder for you to respond to them, because it's like, okay, I got to give them a negative response. So what usually happens is you end up just not replying, because it kind of, you feel like you have to give it some time. Like, okay, I'll write a rejection letter tonight when I have time, and you end up getting a little bit of guilt from it, and just, it's easier just not to reply than to reply. Now, if someone emailed you and said, I love your work, here's my stuff, just want to send it out, I'm actually looking for a job, just want to introduce myself because I'm a big fan of your work, they're going to reply back like, that's so awesome, by the way, I looked at your reel, really great stuff, That way they know who you are, you kind of got through to them without ever asking, you demanding, I want stuff. So for me, I found that to be very effective. And moving forward with it, I also I overdid it here, but it's a chance to say, previously I worked on this project, I'm currently doing this, and which I'm wrapping on soon, but I'm going to quickly do another project. Anytime I've done that, and again, I didn't do it on purpose, but anytime I've said, I just finished this, I'm doing this, and I'm quickly jumping onto this, people usually respond with, how quickly are you doing that project? Because we need someone right away. So kind of having that one word, quickly, people are like, well, we need someone, is it a 2-week project? Because we can delay our project for you to come on board. So it's just a quick way of saying, I actually, even though I just said I'm not looking for a job, I actually am going to be available soon if you want me. And you've had a chance to plug all these other projects, which is a good validation. You can say, I just did this, this, and this. And even if, because this is a common thing, even if you haven't got a lot of experience and you can't say, okay, well, I just did Transformers 10 and Die Hard 15 and Die Hard vs. Transformers 10, you can still at least put other stuff in there. It's a chance to market yourself without being braggy. And that's something I'll get into in a moment, but everything I do, I try and be as humble as I can. You don't want to ever come off being really cocky. And the problem is that with email, like, it's very easy for someone to misread it and be like, yeah, that guy sounds like a dick. I'm going to hire this other person. And I've seen that. There's a guy I know who put his reel up. Actually, now I know why it makes so much sense. He had 5 million views. So he decided on Vimeo to charge $1 to view his reel. And it's because he wanted to make $5 million. But a lot of people were not wanting to check out his work because they're like, why would I give you $1 to look at your reel to see if I want to hire you? So it kind of had a bit of a negative impact. And I thought it was really kind of stupid at the time. But then I'm like, $5 million, that'd be worth it. Okay. So, I kind of understand his perspective now. But at the time, it was kind of like rippling through the industry, like, who the hell is this guy to like charge $1 to look at his reel? But good on him, entrepreneur, But that being said, this is a chance to market yourself and have a way to brag a little bit, advertise that I just did this and I'm doing that. That way it's not like I'm doing all this cool stuff and you're selling yourself. It's more conversational. And that's what I always try and do, is make it a bit more of a conversation rather than being like putting them on a pedestal, like, please give me a job, I'll work for free or whatever, The other thing is just going to, I work both in, whatever software. This is because typically when you're applying for a job or people looking at your work, there may be these negative things that pop up. Okay, they might look at your stuff and be like, ooh, I saw on his thing that they use 3ds Max. Where am I a house? Okay, I can't hire that person. Or they might look at your stuff and realize, hey, that person's shot was on someone else's reel. Maybe they didn't do it. There can be times when certain things pop up and it can actually have a lot of negative impact. So anything that you can catch yourself, it's good to address it, because if there's a bit of an unknown, then what's going to happen is they're going to, over time, it will actually sink into their head. Yeah, I'm not sure if I trust this person. But if you're able to address it right away, you're able to get rid of it. So that way you eliminate any of that negativity associated with what you're doing. Okay, so one quick example, I went to Scanline, they do all the water stuff, lots of ocean tidal waves, stuff like that. And I went in there and I had a big chat with them. It went really well. And I got offered the job. And however, I didn't know, I had breakfast the next day with a friend of mine. He's a visual effects supervisor. And he mentioned like, oh, I was in there that afternoon and they were talking about you and they were really concerned because you had so many projects and so many companies on your resume. So they started thinking like, this isn't normal. Maybe this guy got fired from like every place, or maybe this person, is lying about their stuff. It was more like, a lot of people there knew me. However, it was more one of those like, this is a little bit weird, like, 10,000 pages or something. No, I'm kidding. But it is something that I never thought of. I never in a million years would have thought like having a beefy resume is actually a bad thing. However, he mentioned like, yeah, they were really kind of concerned about this. However, I was fortunate because Chris, my friend, was like, oh, I've worked with Allan at like 6 different places in 3 different countries. Like, usually what happens, he gets hired at the end when shit's hit the fan and they need to bring in someone to fix things. So they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now, I'm lucky that he was there to do that. Otherwise, I don't know. But I never thought of that. And for me then, it meant that I could always put that in there if I felt like that was an issue. I could always say, by the way, I know I've got a lot of stuff on my resume. It's because I'm usually the guy who gets called in to put out all the fires. Haha, whatever. But then they're going to be like, oh, cool, I was wondering about that. Great, keep reading. Okay, so I'll wrap this up, but basically that paragraph there in the middle, bam, is it's more about addressing certain things. So I'm going to educate people about software I use or other things I think that they might be interested in, but it's a chance to disqualify any negativity associated with what you're doing as well. So it's just a chance to cover any bases you need. Now, by the way, I'm going to give you guys a link later if you want to download all this stuff. I've actually got like a very in-depth explanation of like all this stuff, so you can kind of deconstruct it further and be like, okay, now it makes sense because his Aussie accent made none. So just moving forward, it's just like most of the typical work I picked up for these days is to lean towards either simulating water, blah, blah, blah. So again, I'm just doing that to resonate with people who might look at my stuff and be like, what the hell are you? Or a vampire killer? Or you're a, fire guy? Or what is it? So it's a chance for you to kind of point out what you're seeking, what you do, so that way you're making up their mind for them. Because the hardest thing is if you go to someone and say, I do 3D or I do 2D, that means nothing. They can be like, oh, you're this or that. If you paint a very specific image in your head of who you are, then they're going to say, oh, you're the person who does all the water simulations. Great. Okay, so the next time they need water, they'll be like, oh, there was that person, there was that girl that was doing all the water stuff, or that guy who did this. Then they can actually start to single you out. And you want to do that. You want them to think, fire, get that one in, or water, or whatever it's going to be. Okay, so really important. I will get into that. So finally, I put a link to my CV and reel below, in case you ever need someone, as well as some references and a breakdown reel as well. So in other words, I just quickly summarized, here's my stuff, here's my shit, okay? But I've put all the other stuff in there as well. So it's a chance to say, okay, here's all my stuff in case you're interested. But the whole setup I've done was basically saying, I'm not looking for a job, but in case you're looking ever, here's my stuff, okay? And then please let me know if you have any questions. Now, the final paragraph is a chance for me to recalibrate the conversation, okay? So if I'm applying for work and, I write like, I just worked here, I've got all this experience and, I know all this software and blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, what a dick. So this is a chance to say, hey, to make it more humble, okay? So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm a big fan of the work you guys pulled out. So I definitely love the opportunity to work with you guys. I was curious about the recent commercial you guys did, blah, blah, blah. And that line there, like I was curious about the recent project, that's a chance to get personal. Actually, it does three things. It's a chance to get personal with them about something they're doing. It's also showing it isn't a cut and paste email, okay? Because you get that sometimes. It's dear sir, blah, blah, blah. And it's just such an obvious, pasting, sending them out to 5,000 people. Okay, so this is a chance to make it a little bit more, hey, I'm specifically talking to you. And another thing, and I do this a lot without realizing, but I always seem to end an email with a question, so it ends up kind of forcing the person to reply to me. So then I end up with 1,000 emails because everyone replies. I'm like, damn it. But seriously, email is my enemy. But it is a chance for you to say like, hey, I was curious about this thing. How did you guys do it? And that way it kind of makes them feel positioned to respond to you. So instead of like, cool, there's your stuff, great, I'll put it in the bin. It's like, oh yeah, the guinea pig commercial with like the flamethrower and the crazy other stuff. Yeah, we actually had to do all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it gets a chance to have a conversation start and you can go back and forth. And that is so powerful because you're taking yourself out of the job candidate area and into someone's personal space where they're going to know who you are. It's going to really resonate with them. And it gives you a chance to continue to talk. Okay, and they'll maybe ask questions about you. So all this stuff, it's very invisible, but it's just something that I've never done in a manipulative way. It's just more over time. It's going to become quite general for me to say, hey, here's some of the work I just did and I'm doing now. Quickly jumping onto this. By the way, here's my stuff. I really love the work you guys do, blah, blah, blah. So thanks again, Rick or whoever. Make sure the name is actually Rick. But that's something I've just started, like I've been doing for a long time, and it's just, I've always found when I meet people and they're like, it was really nice to meet you, Allan. It's going to make them be like, oh, like they actually remembered my name, or it makes it feel so much more personal. So I always try and end with their name, okay? And, the kindest regards, all that stuff. Again, it's just more to say, like, anything that you said that might be misconstrued as being cocky, it's a chance to bring it back into, I'm genuine and down to earth. And that's what you want. So that way email, it's so easy to have that miscommunication. And then you put your stuff at the bottom. Always put your stuff at the bottom. This is something that's been researched a lot. Everyone always clicks any link that's at the bottom of your email. So do that. Actually, one thing I will mention, my email signature, these days I put a lot in there, and it's a chance to validate yourself a bit more. If they want to know more information about you, they can click all the links below. And just in case you ever did have any negative stuff about you on the internet, just in case that was the situation where you don't want them to Google you because it turned out that you used to, be a mass murderer or whatever it is. But seriously, putting here's a link to my reel, here's a link to my IMDb, here's a link to my LinkedIn, they can just go click, click, click and open them all up. It's less likely they'll end up Googling you because you've provided all the information to them. Okay, so you want to kind of force the direction exactly how you want it to go. It sounds like a lot of work, and I will say this a lot. This is your career, and all this stuff, most people think, I don't need to do that stuff. I had a dinner with Autodesk, with the execs at Autodesk recently, and I mentioned, the career stuff, how most artists, they're like, I don't need to worry about negotiating money. The producer can take care of that. I trust him. And everyone laughed because that's exactly what a producer would love to hear. Is like, great, okay, $5 an hour, done, move on to the next person. It's not like anyone's out there to screw you, but you need to have your own best interests at heart. If you don't, no one else is going to really step up and be like, well, my conscience says that I shouldn't screw you. My bank account says, get them, So just keep that in mind. Like you need to know this stuff. It's very important. I'll pick up the pace a little bit, but where was I? So yeah, that's all the cover letter stuff. I did have a link, and go back, please. Okay, so I've got a link here. If you go there, I'm going to put together some stuff for you guys. And, I'll try to make it easy. It's allanmckay.com/Paris. Come on. Hopefully I spelled it right. So what I'll do is I'm going to send you guys some information, some extra stuff, like the cover letter stuff, other information, especially on negotiating, how to get a pay rise or promotion, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you check out that link. It'll I'll be able to give you more goodies. All right, so I hope you found it valuable. Like I said, I've got a bunch of these sorts of videos coming up pretty soon, and I'm actually going to do a tutorial on how to write a cover letter. So if you have any questions, let me know. Leave a comment below. And in addition to that, I'm going to be putting together a few template email scripts that you could actually use yourself if you wanted to as well. So that's something that I'm going to work on. They'll be on my website pretty soon too. So if you want to go to allanmckay.com, you can sign up for my newsletter there, which is a VIP emailing list. It's all free. But this is where I typically send out a lot of really high value content every single week. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Subscribe to the channel. I know everyone says that, but this to me is kind of the equivalent of Facebook where you friend someone, or Instagram where you're following someone. This is a chance to kind of get that high value content delivered directly to you. So I think it's beneficial, up to you. But either way, I'll be back with more videos very soon. And let me know what you think of this, because for me, I think that this is one of those overlooked yet most critical things that will qualify you and land you the job, or at least get you in front of the right people. So it's really critical to set the tone with the right cover letter. These days, the cover letter is typically your email, but it's definitely something to really put a lot of attention into. All right, rock on.